Novel Audio presents A Spell of Trouble by Leighann Dobbs and Traci Douglas. Read for you by Amy Rubinate. Isolde Quinn flipped the sign in the window of her shop, Enchanted Pets, to open. A burst of pride warmed her chest as she looked around at the cages, aquariums, and playpens where she had her beloved charges. Not pets, not merchandise. Charges. Because that was how she thought of them. Beings that were in her care until the right person came along to give them a home forever. She loved this time of morning before the streets were full of tourists, when she could come in and check on all her little furry friends. It was a perfect 78 degrees in the store. Despite the muggy heat outside, Issy made sure it was always pleasant for the animals. She slowly made her way to the back of the store, inhaling the smell of wood chips and dander, checking on each of her charges, running her fingers over the silky fur of the litter of kittens that had been raised specifically to be familiars to young witches. She scratched the cockatiels and parakeets that sidestepped their way along their perches to rub their heads against their cages. In the back, Issy paused before the very last tank, a special delivery she'd gotten earlier in the week. She bent over, peering into the terrarium, brushing away one of the strawberry blonde corkscrew curls that had fallen into her eyes. Inside the terrarium, a pair of solstice toads blinked up at her from their bed of moss, their orange eyes bright and alert, their purple necks glowing. The toads were quite rare, coveted by witches who wanted to cast the most powerful spells. They would fetch a pretty penny, but only for the right witch. Issy saw it as her duty to make sure no animal in her care was purchased by a witch, or human, with ill intent. The saliva of the toads would make any spell 10 times more powerful, but they had to be handled with care. The saliva could turn poisonous in the wrong hands, which was why Issy had a lock charm on the terrarium, and also why she kept the toads in the back. Only paranormals looking for something special ever ventured back there. Satisfied that the toads were in good health, she made her way back to the front, looking over at the goldfish, hedgehogs, and bunnies that would become familiars to other witches, or simply well-loved family pets to humans. She paused to look into a tank full of fire newts, which blinked up at her in dismay before scurrying under a rock. "Don't worry, I'm not after your eyes." She chuckled and walked away. Witches didn't really kill newts for their eyes. At least, not any witches she knew. Yep! Bella, the tiny orange Pomeranian who was her familiar, had been following dutifully at her heels, and apparently now wanted some recognition. Issy picked her up and cradled the pooch in her arms, rubbing her cheek against the dog's silky fur. She plunked a kiss on the dog's head, her heart expanding at the look of adoration in Bella's luminescent brown eyes. Bella's pink tongue darted out, leaving a warm, wet trail on Issy's face. She'd been without a familiar for most of her life. One of her first familiars had died young, and Issy couldn't bear the thought of losing another one, especially since she felt responsible for the death. But when she'd seen Bella in a litter of pups, she'd known in her heart that they should be together. Though the dog was still young and they couldn't communicate with each other very well, Issy knew Bella would be a great familiar and companion in time.
"I don't know why you coddle the creature. It has minimal intelligence."
The voice came from a chubby, dark gray cat that sat on her counter. Brimstone. He wasn't one of the pets for sale in the store, nor was he her familiar. He was more like a companion. He'd been hanging around with Issy and her cousins for as long as she could remember, but unlike a normal familiar, he came and went as he pleased and answered to no one. She didn't know much about Brimstone, just that he was ancient and had the attitude to go along with it. Bella growled at Brimstone, which caused the pudgy cat to laugh. The dog's growl sounded more like the hum of a bumblebee than the threat of a canine. Issy put Bella down and headed behind the counter to open the cash register and get ready for the day. As she approached the counter, Brimstone's golden-orange eyes narrowed, and his gaze shot to the window. He arched his back and hissed. Issy looked outside, her heart leaping when she saw the object of his distaste. It was one of her least favorite people, Louella Drummond, and she was heading this way.